Mining to come forward and present the Kin story. Thanks, Andrew.
Morning, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for the opportunity to read corporate. Kin has a number of legs to its strategy. We're an experienced and advanced explorer, a potential developer. We have 1.3 million ounces of gold in resources currently. We have development optionality with a number of processing plants in the region and our own standalone opportunity. We're well funded and we've been running a very aggressive exploration program in the Leonora area for the last 2 or 3 years. And today's presentation, in the interest of time, will be mostly about the exploration story, but I will also touch on the development optionality. But before we get on to that, the background, Andrew mentioned the sizzle that's going on in the Leonora area with a number of corporate actions and a number of larger players moving into the area. We're well established there, 650 odd square kilometres of ground. As I mentioned, 1.3 million ounces of resources, and we've been taking an exploration-driven approach to recognising and yielding the value in this asset. The majority of the asset is around the CARDINIA area, about 30 kilometres to the north east of Leonora. The corporate structure, 866 million shares on issue, market cap of 71 million and cash of just over 6. So we have an enterprise value of about 65 million, which on our resource base is about $50 a resource ounce. So reasonably cheap on the metrics, and within our peer group, we're probably the lowest value per resource ounce. Shareholder base, the Delphi Group, which is a family office out of Germany with 30%, St Barbara with 18%, a group of high net worths with 27%, and retail investors with just over 25%. Management, experienced, lots of operational and development experience, finance, mining, exploration, operations management. As I mentioned, we'll focus on the CARDINIA area, which is in the centre of the slide here. We have other projects, Mertondale with just under 500,000 ounces, Rayside with 175,000 ounces, down to the south of the Leonora-Laverton Road. But the CARDINIA area is where we've been putting most of our focus in this last 2 years. This is a magnetics picture, and I'll touch on the magnetics and the gravity and why they're significantly different and what they tell you about the project in itself. But at CARDINIA, and we've broken CARDINIA into an eastern corridor and a western corridor, with the central part there being the ultramafic unit. And in the northern part of that slide, the ultramafic unit is highly magnetic, but in the south and central part of that slide, the magnetics are essentially non-existent, very highly demagnetised, which is an indicator of the amount of alteration and the amount of mineralisation that exists in that south and central part of that slide. For scale, that's about 8 kilometres north-south by about 4 or 5 kilometres east-west, so it's a very significant alteration zone. And while magnetics is traditionally the method you use for mapping the geology of the area, it's not particularly applicable to this area where so much of the alteration has demagnetised it. So we have gone to gravity, and I appreciate this is a bit of a busy slide for people to get a focus on, but gravity gives you the contrast between the unaltered material, which is in red and white there, and the altered and mineralised material, which is the blue and green images on the slide. So, and over the top of that, we put the structure, and underneath all this big block of ground is a large felsic intrusion, and that large felsic intrusion creates all this structure above it. And it's that structure that has been mineralised in multiple positions, in multiple directions, with multiple high-grade shoots of mineralisation. So that's the reason that we really like this ground as the place where we're going to be able to extend the mineral resource significantly. This is a window into the eastern corridor, slightly different colour scheme, but this is gravity still. So again, the blue and green areas are the reduced gravity components, and they're the strongly altered and strongly mineralised parts of the mineral system. And you'll see the pattern where the drill holes shown by all the magenta dots is where the high-grade mineralisation sits, and it sits on the boundary of these blue areas in contact with the red and the yellow areas. So, that's the structure that is sitting above this large felsic intrusion that sits underneath all this slide. And I've highlighted in the words on the left-hand side the near-surface mineralisation, which is in black, and the deeper mineralisation that sits underneath it, which is highlighted in red. And CARDINIA's had a bit of a reputation over a long period of time of being a relatively low-grade area. The mineral resource grade averages about 1.3 grams, but when you're drilling in the eastern corridor, it's anything but low-grade. So some of the nearer surface intersections, and I'll point out the most recent exploration results that we've announced, which came from Helens East and Rangoon. So in the near surface environment, 21 metres at 3.5, and at Rangoon, 43 metres at just over a gram. But underneath that, it turns into narrower but significantly higher grade material. So 7 metres at 25 for Helens East, and 3 metres at 21, and there's a host of other intersections in that sort of tenor in this eastern corridor mineralisation. We're going to have a bit of a look at Helens and Rangoon in a bit more detail in cross-section, so to give investors a bit of an appreciation of what I'm talking about. So this is the Fiona and Helens East area that we'll have a look at in cross-section. The near surface mineralisation generally less than 3 grams and 3 to 11 metres in width. The deeper intersections, and this was released about a week ago, 7 metres at 24, and there are a number of other intersections in this sort of tenor along strike from this. So this isn't just a one-off drill hole, this is a pattern that we're seeing across this whole Fiona, Helens East region. And typically we'll see that as a strongly sulfidic kind of mineralisation, and it sits on the boundary of this yellow unit, this felsic volcanic unit, in contact with the green rocks, the dolerites and the basalts. So this is a common pattern that we're seeing across the whole of the eastern corridor currently. And note the vertical or near vertical sense of the mineralisation here. In contrast, we'll have a look at the Rangoon, and we released these results on Monday this week. Rangoon, a shallowly east-dipping orientation to the lodes. The nearer surface, it's sort of 4 metres to 11 metres at, again, that sub 3 grams. But we've come across a big wide section somewhere between 27 and 43 metres thick. This is all near surface mineralisation, so this is no deeper than about 80 metres vertical. So nice little discovery in this little area. We have another 400 metres of strike length of drilling that is sitting with the assay lab that is drilled into similar looking rocks as we've got these wide intersections in. Those results will be released as they come to hand over this next few weeks, but we're really looking forward to seeing what they turn out to be. But my expectation is these east dipping structures link the vertical structures that you saw at Helens East and at the 3 or 4 other deposits that we have in that eastern corridor. These east dipping structures link them all together, and so it's quite a complex and extensive mineralised system that we're dealing here at the eastern corridor. We've drilled coming up for 30,000 metres of drilling into this eastern corridor in this last 12 or 15 months. The mineralisation's almost exclusively sulphide based, and we have a significant research and development block of work being completed with CSIRO and our own internal geological group to give us a good signature to this mineralisation. So we feel like we know a fair bit about it now. It's a gold and silver mineralisation, not just gold by itself. And I put up this picture of the chip trays. The light coloured material in the top row is unmineralised up until you get to the last 3 or 4 slots there. And from then on, and the logging that you see in the numbers are percentages of pyrite logged by the geologist with no reference to what the assay was. And he's picked it to the metre. It goes all the way to the bottom of the hole. It's running about 2% pyrite through that. So the mineralisation's actually pretty easy to pick now that everybody's managed to get their eye in for what we're dealing with. It has a few credits in terms of pyrite and, in terms of chalcopyrite and galena. So a little bit of copper, a little bit of lead. And the metallurgical test work, and we've done a whole raft of flotation test work on the sulphide material. It floats particularly well. The oxide and transitional material that sits above this metallurgical recovery is between 94 and 95% typically. The reason that we think that you get the difference in grade, the sub 3 gram and the plus half ounce material, is the size of the gold grains that you get in each of the intersections. So this is 4 microphotographs of concentrate that's been made. The gold's particularly fine, typically sub 10 microns, but you occasionally get these coarse 100 micron or more pieces of gold, as you see in the bottom right-hand panel of that slide. So, there's a readily explainable reason why sometimes you get particularly high grade, sometimes you get lower grade, but the key here will be to follow the sulphides in the mining process, because that's where all the gold is, and you'll get these spectacular grades as credits along the way. Metallurgical recovery in sulphides, 96.9% from Cardinia Hill, 91.1% from Helens. So my expectation is we're going to be very similar to the oxides when you float and fine grind this material and just leach the gold there. Rougher concentrates, about 10% mass recovery, 27 grams per tonne gold, 23% sulphur in the concentrate. So it's a readily saleable, very clean, readily treatable at site kind of concentrate. Development options. Kin had a development which I stopped back in 2018, but we think that standalone development's a reasonable option for us. We'd like to get to between 1.5 and 2 million ounces before we reconsider that. We are at 1.3 million ounces currently. There's a resource upgrade which includes the last 12 months worth of drilling coming in the September quarter. So we'll go very close, I think, to getting to that milestone. We have existing hardware in terms of mills, crushers, conveyors, structural steel. The mills, crushers, and conveyors are all second-hand. The structural steel is all brand new, and you can see a couple of the tanks there that have been constructed. The alternative to that is a partnered development joint venture, typically with oxide ore is the norm for those sort of things. There's 16 million tonnes per annum of processing capacity within 100 kilometres of us currently. It's 4 processing plants owned by 4 different owners. One of those processing plants is owned by a major shareholder. So it's an interesting dynamic going on in that discussion. We have 2 open pit developments one of which has been approved by the department in Western Australia, so it's ready to go, shovel ready now. The second is under consideration by the department, but it's a reasonably plain vanilla approval is my expectation, is that it would be sometime in the September quarter. Those 2 open pit developments contain approximately 100,000 ounces of gold production in oxide and transitional type of materials. So we're actively considering that, but the deal will need to be a favourable deal, something that we can live with. We're not going to get turned over by the fact that we are desperate to go and treat one of these things if we don't get the deal that we think is in our best interests. So in summary, as I mentioned, an advanced explorer/developer, 1.3 million ounces now, We're moving to operational readiness pretty rapidly. We're focused on making these major discoveries, and we have several relatively small discoveries so far, but I think I can point to some of these deeper drilling results that we're in a really good position to turn some of these near surface things that have been discovered previously into significant underground mines in the fullness of time. We have a very good understanding of the geology in this eastern corridor. We have a good understanding in the western corridor, and we'll be extending that to the Mertondale and Rayside areas and the other things that we own that haven't been the priority for us so far. But I think over this next year or two, you'll start to bear some fruit of the investment that we've made. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Andrew. It certainly does look like there's a few things that could